People were laughing. Not loud at first. Little laughs, quick and sharp, like small stones hitting glass. The food court smelled like hot fries and cinnamon. The floor hummed under my shoes. I stood in the middle of the mall, my white cane touching the edge of a chair, and I heard Maya say clear and cold, "I can't do this, Kai. I can't date a blind man." Everything slowed. A tray clattered. Someone whispered, "That's harsh." Another voice, maybe a teen, said, "Bro." She said it out loud. My ears tried to find one safe sound, a soft voice, a friendly breath, anything. All I found was air moving around me, full of strangers, and a pain that felt heavier than my cane. "Maya," I said, lowering my voice so it would not tremble. "Let's talk somewhere quiet." "No," she snapped. "I'm done. You never see me dress up, never see the photos I send. I want a man who can look at me, really look at me. I want a normal life." Normal. The word hit like a door slamming. I heard the squeak of her shoes as she turned. Then a deeper voice slid between us, smooth like oil on water. "You heard the lady," he said. "She wants a man who can lead, not someone who needs leading." I gripped my cane harder. "Who are you?" "Myles," he said. "Her upgrade." People gasped. A chair scraped. Maya gave a short, nervous laugh that tried to sound brave. I felt the warm air shift as they moved away together. My throat tightened. The mall buzz rose again, only now it was like a storm far off, rolling toward me. "Hey, man, you okay?" a gentle voice asked near my right shoulder. I swallowed. "Yes. Thank you." I turned, measuring the floor with my cane until it kissed empty space. I found the side of a pillar and leaned on it. The tiles were cool through my sneakers. The cinnamon smell made my stomach turn. Behind the heat in my cheeks, another feeling was waking up. It was not anger, it was not shame. It was something old and steady, like a drum my grandmother used to play when I was small. It said, "Stand." I pushed off the pillar. "I'm fine," I told the stranger and myself. "I'm good." But I was not fine, not yet. I could hear Maya again, not far away, telling someone how she was done babysitting. The words were a match thrown into dry grass. I felt the fire go up my chest, and that was when a familiar step came quickly toward me, fast and light, like a well-trained breeze. "Sir," a man said softly close to my ear, careful not to startle me. "Do you want me to intervene?" I knew the voice. I knew the scent of clean leather and mint gum. I knew the way he always placed himself at an angle where he could guard me without boxing me in. "No," I said, "not yet." He hesitated. Understood. People were still watching. Phones were out. I could hear the click of cases, the soft thump of a camera button. I straightened my shoulders and let the sound settle. I told myself to breathe like my coach had taught me. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. The air cooled my tongue, cooled my chest. "Kai," Maya said suddenly, stepping back toward me. Her heels tapped fast. "Just to be clear, it's over. Don't call me. Don't text me. If anyone asks, we were never serious." "Copy," I said, because simple words were all I trusted right then. "I heard you." "Good," she said, and she walked away again, her perfume floating behind her like a goodbye that looked better than it felt. I stood still while the crowd's interest shifted to the next bright noise, the sneaker store raffle, a baby crying, the slap of a basketball in an arcade. The man beside me adjusted his stance. He would not move unless I told him to. That was the rule. That was the life I had chosen to live. "Sir," he murmured, "the car is ready. We can leave any time." "Give me 5, I said. "I want to walk." We began to move. The cane tapped the world into a map. Edge of bench, flat of tile, metal trash can, soft bump of a rug at a shop door. Steps have shapes when you listen long enough. The mall's steps were square and polite. The world made space when the white cane spoke. Not everyone, but enough. I could have left right then. I could have melted into the air, driven home, hidden under my quilt, and slept for a week. But another truth was rising in me. Something my father always said. When people try to make you small, stand tall enough for 2. That is the shocking moment you asked for, the one that pulls the heart by the collar. Now let me tell you how I reached it. I was not born blind. It came like a storm at 17, quick and rude, the kind that knocks out your lights and leaves you standing in your own house, a stranger. Night blindness first. Then the edges of the world closed like heavy curtains. Doctors said big words. My mother folded them into prayers. My father bought equipment. I learned to read with my fingers, to mark the edge of the counter with a rubber strip, to count my steps. I learned that sound paints pictures too. How a hallway has a long echo. How trees toss their hands when wind visits. How a person's voice holds colors. We lived in Atlanta then, in a brick house with a mango tree that somehow survived winter because my mother talked to it like a child. My father, Adewale, was always moving, calls at dawn, meetings at noon, flights that slid across the calendar like chess pieces. People called him a king of ports and power, first in Lagos, then across oceans. He did not wear crowns, he wore simple shirts, expensive shoes, and a face that never forgot the street he came from. He taught me to listen before I spoke, and to never announce who I was until the room had told me who it wanted me to be. Last year he ran for governor back home, Lagos State, where the roads he built had given jobs to men everyone else ignored. People knew his name already. The election became a river that carried all of us, reporters, donors, enemies, old aunties who prayed in head wraps that looked like birds. He won in a flood of votes. The night he took the oath, drums shook the air. My grandmother said, "Adewale, power is a market. Buy only what your soul can carry." He laughed, then he listened. To many people, my father is the billionaire governor, the man with gates and guards. To me, he is still the boy who sold oranges by the bus stop, the man who holds my elbow when we cross the street and never says it out loud. He told me, "Kai, your eyes will not be your only way to see. Make your ears brilliant, make your heart brave." So I did. I chose not to be the son who hides. I went to college. I took the train and learned the stations by scent. Fresh bread at 5 Points, Old Cool Air near West End, fried chicken at Lakewood, Fort McPherson. I learned how to hold my cane like a wand that wakes up every curb. I learned that people help if you let them and hurt if you let them too. Maya came during midterms. She laughed like rain on tin, fast and sunny. She liked my quiet. I liked her noise. We ate jollof at a Ghanaian spot 2 blocks from campus and argued about who made it better, Ghana or Nigeria, until the owner kicked us out laughing. She sent me long texts about her dreams. I sent her voice notes about mine. It was sweet. It was normal. That was the word she used a lot. Normal. But as weeks passed, normal began to mean, see me the way I wish I was. She wanted to FaceTime outfits and watch me nod at colors I could not name. She wanted me to look at sunsets I could not catch. When I sent her poems about how a storm feels on skin, or how a room opens when a friend walks in, she said, "That's nice, but I want real life." I told her this was my real life. She went quiet, then louder in other places. I should have seen the break coming, but you cannot see a cloud you live inside. This afternoon she asked to meet at the mall, the big one with the glass roof that makes the rain sound like soft drumming. I thought she wanted shawarma and a plan for spring break. Instead, she gave me a clean cut, right there in the food court where teenagers spin in chairs and aunties share gossip and uncles argue over soccer scores. She cut, and the crowd watched the thread fall. We kept walking now, my guard and I, past the perfume store and the sneaker wall and the corner where a violinist sometimes plays for love, not money. I felt the air change again, a small rustle that meant people were shifting, clearing a path without being told. That is when another set of steps came toward us. 3 pairs, steady and sure, not fast like anger, not loud like pride. Steps I knew like a song. "Sir," my guard said, a new edge in his voice. "They're here." I stopped. The tile was warm under my feet, heated by the sun that made the glass roof glow. My heart slowed first, then sped up again, because those steps carried a world with them, a world that could lift me or burn the whole place down without raising its voice. "Young man," said the first voice, deep as a drum, gentle as an evening story, the voice that spoke in 2 countries and both called him theirs. "What happened here?" People around us went silent so fast even the air waited. Somewhere behind me, a phone slipped from a hand and hit the floor. I turned my head toward the sound I had known since I was born. I opened my mouth to answer. And then Maya's laugh rang out from the smoothie stand, bright, careless, close. "Babe," she told Myles, "let's post this. He won't even see it." My father's breath changed the tiniest bit. I felt the crowd lean in. I said the first word. And that was when a voice boomed across the mall speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable—" The ceiling speakers crackled, then hissed. The announcement cut off like someone pulled a plug. For 2 long seconds, the whole mall held its breath. The smoothie machines paused. Even the children quieted, as if the air itself wanted to hear what came next. My father's shoulder turned a fraction toward me. He never grabbed, he never rushed. His presence was like a shade tree, wide, steady, and patient. "Kai," he said in a low voice meant for home, not for crowds, "are you hurt?" "No," I said. "Just embarrassed." "Embarrassment fades," he answered, the old saying soft in his mouth. "Character does not." Footsteps gathered on our left. I knew that cluster well. 2 aides, a mall manager with nervous keys, and a security chief who breathed like he lifted weights for breakfast. My own guard shifted half a step, placing his body between mine and whatever might be coming. The mall speaker popped back to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Saturday Culture Fair special guest." A drumbeat sprang out. Talking drum, then djembe, then handclaps. Someone cheered behind the smoothie stand. The manager rushed forward, words tumbling out. "Governor Adewale, sir, we didn't expect you until 3, he said. "The stage is set up by the central fountain. We can escort you now." "Later," my father said, not moving. "We handle family first." The word family sent a little ripple through the crowd. I could hear heads turn, I could feel phones rise. The guard next to me pressed his earpiece once. He didn't speak, but the air around us tightened. Maya's laugh came again, too close and too bright. "He won't even see it," she said to Myles, her voice sweet with sugar she didn't earn. "Come on, let's take a selfie." They stepped into my ears picture, a change in perfume, a plastic straw squeak, sneakers that wanted to be designer. Myles's tone was smooth as old gum. "New caption," he said. "When your ex can't see you glow, trade up." A small sound escaped someone near them. Not a laugh, more like a shocked breath. My father heard it. He hears everything. He turned his face toward their voices with the same calm he used in rooms where men already hated him. "Good afternoon," he said. Silence fell like a blanket. Maya froze. I heard the way her breath hitched, how the straw clicked against her tooth. Myles went still, then adjusted his stance like a person who suddenly remembered to stand taller. Maya said. "Hi." My father did not raise his voice. He never needed to. "This young man is my son," he said. "He has no reason to be ashamed." Something changed in the crowd. It was not a wave or a shout. It was softer, like people letting their chests relax. A child whispered, "That's the governor." And then a woman near the perfume shop said, "From Lagos? On the news?" A man answered, "Yes, him, the one who built the new clinics." I kept my shoulders square and my chin even. I wanted to fold up. I wanted to disappear. But the floor under my shoes felt like a stage now, and my cane was a line drawn on it. I remembered my father's rule. When the room tells you who to be, listen, and then choose. My guard leaned in. "We can escort to the service exit," he breathed, one word. "Hold," I said. Maya found her voice. It reached for a smile and tripped over pride. "Governor Aide, sir," she tried. "I didn't mean—" "You did," my father said, not unkindly. "Words are seeds. You meant to plant them." Myles cleared his throat, sliding himself in front of her, in the way of a person who liked to be a shield when cameras were watching. "Governor, with respect, this is private. We were just public," I said quietly. "You made it public." He let out a soft laugh. "Man, don't get sensitive." I turned my head toward his voice and pictured his mouth, lips pressed a little too tight, like he'd been practicing lines and finally found a stage. "I'm not sensitive," I said. "I'm accurate." A hand touched my elbow. Not a pull, a question. I knew the hand, my father's, a callus from years ago that never left. "Walk with me," he said. We didn't go far. 20 steps brought us to the low railing around the central fountain. Water talked in a gentle circle. The drums from the Culture Fair stage warmed the air. I placed my palm on the cool marble and let the sound of the fountain fill in the edges of the space. The mall manager fidgeted, then whispered to someone to turn the music down. The drums softened to a heartbeat under everything. "May I use the mic?" my father asked. The manager made a little noise that meant yes, yes, anything. A cable snapped, a stand squeaked. The guard shifted to keep an arm-length bubble around us. My father didn't take the microphone. He placed it against my hand. "You first," he said. My chest went hot, then it went cool. I understood. This was not a rescue. This was a gift. He was giving me my own voice in a room that had tried to steal it. I lifted the mic. I didn't shout. I let the mall's space carry me. "My name is Kai," I said. "I am blind. I'm not broken." The words landed like stones in a calm lake, soft, then spreading. I let the ripples do their work. "Some people think love is a picture," I said. "They want you to see them just one way. But real love is more like music. You feel it. You can't always explain it, but you know when it's true." A baby cooed. A teenager sniffed. Somewhere a shoe squeaked and then stopped again. "I use a cane so I don't hit what's in front of me," I said, tapping the tip once on the marble. "All of us need something that helps us move. Some use glasses, some use maps, some use pride. Pride breaks easy." That last line wasn't planned. It fell out on its own. I heard a few soft sounds, the kind aunties make when a word lands right. "I'm learning," I said. "I'll keep learning. If you laughed at me a minute ago, it's okay. I've laughed at the wrong thing before. Today we choose better." I lowered the mic. I could have said more. I could have told the whole story, but my father taught me that silence can be a sentence too. I handed him the microphone. He did not take it. He pushed it gently back. "Wait," he said, voice low. "One more step." I understood again. He wanted me to own what came next, not because of who he was, because of who I was. I raised the mic once more. "My father is visiting this city for work," I said. "He's a public servant. He is also a dad. He came to find me because that's what fathers do. If you see a parent today, call them. If you see a stranger who needs a hand, offer one. We can all be better than a moment of meanness." I let the mic fall to my side. The mall didn't explode into cheers. That wasn't our story. It breathed out together like a single big person who had been holding the air too long. Then Myles clapped, slow. The sound was wrong here, empty and shiny. He stepped forward so the mic would catch him. "Nice speech," he said. "Real nice. Maybe next you'll tell us how the governor's son shops with 10 bodyguards while regular folks can't pay rent." The words were practiced. He'd been waiting to use them. He wanted a fight, not a lesson. "Enough," the security chief said, voice flat. But my father spoke first, still gentle. "Young man," he said, "your anger is loud. Your facts are small." Myles took another step. My guard moved. Their feet whispered on tile, then stilled. "Sir," my guard said softly, "permission to relocate." Before my father could answer, 3 things happened at once. First, every phone around us buzzed, like a field waking up after rain. You can hear a notification even when it's quiet. You can really hear it when 100 people get one together. A whisper rose. "It's online." Second, the mall speakers clicked, and a new voice came on, rushed and excited. "We are thrilled to announce our guest has arrived. Please welcome the Honorable Governor Adewale to the Culture Fair stage." Third, a child's voice cut through from behind the smoothie stand, the same child as before, braver now. "Mama, that's him. That's the governor. And that's his son." Maya gasped, not trying to hide it. "Kai," she said, suddenly small, "your dad is—" I didn't answer. The fountain kept talking. The drums picked up again, brighter now, rolling toward us from the stage like a friendly tide. The security chief murmured into his radio, and more feet took positions I couldn't see. My father finally took the mic. He didn't raise it. He held it at his chest. "Walk with me," he said, this time to all of us, all. We turned toward the central stage. The path opened without a word. I could feel people press back just enough to make space, like a river parting for a canoe. My cane found every edge, every change in texture, every tiny ridge that told me we were nearing the open area where the drums lived. Halfway there, my guard's voice ticked in my ear, so quiet only I could catch it. "Sir, the post is trending," he said. "Unknown account. Caption says, 'Blind X gets dumped, then Daddy shows up. Location tag is live.'" I nodded once. Heat pricked my neck, not from shame now, but from the sense of eyes moving toward us, cameras lifting like birds about to fly. My father's hand hovered near my elbow. He didn't touch. He stayed close. We reached the first step to the stage. The drum beat paused to make room. I set my cane, felt the edge, and lifted my foot. And then a new set of shoes hit the tile behind us, fast, many, not marching but trained. The air changed the way it does right before a storm that won't bring rain, only noise. "Governor Adewale," a voice called from the swell, quick and sharp. "Care to comment on the video that just went live?" The words sliced the room in half. I froze with one foot on the step and one on the floor, the mic wire brushing my wrist. The question came again, louder, and a second voice shouted a claim so wild it made the crowd gasp as one. Hoe Karen called the cops. When I refused to pay Hoe fine, unaware of my 50 minutes property. Maya's breath was ragged somewhere behind me. Myles muttered something under his breath, trying to sound smug, but slipping into nervousness. The journalists pressed forward, shoes squeaking, microphone rods scraping the tiles. "Governor, do you think your son's condition makes him unfit to represent your family's image? Governor, some are saying this exposes a weakness. How do you respond?" The words stung, each one carrying the poison of public opinion. For a second, I felt the world shrink, like the cane in my hand was the only thing holding me up. My mind screamed, "You are blind, you are helpless, you are a burden." But another voice answered inside me, steady, slow, carved deep from years of my father's lessons. "You are not your weakness. You are your will." I adjusted my grip on the cane, straightened my back, and lifted the microphone again. "Ask me," I said, my voice clear. The murmurs stopped instantly. "Don't ask my father. Ask me. I was the one dumped." The silence cracked. People shifted closer. A woman gasped. The journalists swung their mics toward me like hungry animals smelling meat. What do you have to say about being humiliated?" one reporter asked. I turned my face toward the sound, not flinching. "Being humiliated doesn't break me. It only shows me who I should never walk with again." Maya finally found her voice, trembling. "Kai, stop. I didn't mean—" "You did," I said softly, my tone cutting through the air sharper than shouting ever could. "You meant every word. You wanted freedom from me, and that's fine, but don't pretend it was kindness. Kindness doesn't abandon in front of a crowd." The audience murmured again, this time in agreement. I could hear it, a low hum of sympathy shifting against Maya. She took a step back, her shoes tapping nervously on the tiles. But Myles wasn't done. "Oh, please," he sneered, his voice rising so the cameras could catch it. "You think people pity you because you're blind? You're nothing without your father's name. Out here people like me grind. People like me see." He drew out the last word, see, like it was a dagger meant to twist. My hand clenched around the cane. Rage flared hot, but my father's hand on my shoulder kept me steady. I breathed deep, 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. I let the fire cool into steel. "You see," I said, turning my face toward him, "but you don't understand. And what good are eyes that can't recognize worth?" The crowd roared, not with laughter, but with something heavier, like approval. For the first time, my father spoke again, slow and deliberate. "Journalists, my son has answered your question. That is all I will say on the matter." He turned toward me, his voice low enough for only me to hear. "But remember, Kai, The world will not stop asking. You must learn to answer with more than pain. I nodded slightly. He was right. This was not the end. It was only the opening battle. The journalists tried again. Governor, is it true your son lives a sheltered life while ordinary citizens struggle? Governor, does this prove your opponents right, that you hide your family's weakness? My guard's voice pressed in urgently. We need to move now. The video is still trending. More cameras are on their way. But my father stayed rooted. He lifted his chin and the entire mall seemed to quiet. Let them trend, he said, his baritone steady as an iron bell. Truth trends longer than lies. And then, from somewhere near the fountain, the child's voice I'd heard earlier piped up again. Mama, the boy shouted. He's brave. He's not weak. He's stronger than that lady. The crowd erupted in laughter and claps. The boy's innocence broke the tension better than any politician's speech could. People began clapping, then cheering. Phones flashed brighter. I tilted my head toward the sound, smiling faintly. Thank you, I said into the microphone, for saying what grown-ups were too afraid to. The applause grew louder. Maya's breath caught audibly. Myles muttered a curse. But just as hope began to fill the air, another voice cut through the noise, this one from the crowd, sharp and accusing. If he wasn't the governor's son, no one would care. He's just privileged. A hush dropped like a stone. That word, privileged, hung heavy, poisonous. The applause faltered. Whispers began again, harsher this time. I gripped the microphone tighter. This was the test. Not Maya, not Myles, not the breakup. This was the real trial, whether I could face the world's blade and not break. You're right, I said, surprising them. The whispers stopped. I am privileged. I have food, shelter, a family that loves me. Many don't. But privilege doesn't mean I don't bleed. Privilege doesn't mean I can't be abandoned. Privilege doesn't mean my blindness doesn't cut deep. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. But maybe, I continued, instead of using privilege as an insult, we can use it as a responsibility. If I am privileged, then my job is to use it to lift those who aren't. That is what my father has done. That is what I will do. Not someday, starting today. The mall exploded in cheers. Even the journalists hesitated, their questions dying under the sound of clapping hands. I turned slightly toward the fountain, letting the spray cool my skin. For the first time since Maya's words sliced me open, I felt taller than my pain. But just as I was finding my footing, just as hope seemed to wrap around me like armor, Myles shouted above the crowd. Then prove it, Kai, he yelled. Prove you're not just a spoiled governor's son. You talk about lifting people, but what can you really do? You can't even see your own girlfriend walking away. The words were like venom, and the crowd gasped again. Maya grabbed his arm, whispering frantically, Stop, please. But Myles shrugged her off, his eyes gleaming with cruel fire. And before I could respond, before my father could intervene, a journalist pushed through with a new claim that made the crowd explode into chaos. Breaking news. Sources are saying this entire mall scene was staged by the governor's team to gain sympathy points before the upcoming campaign. The crowd erupted, cheers turning to shouts, support twisting into doubt, loyalty crumbling into suspicion. Phones went wild, hashtags flying. And I stood there, one foot still on the stage step, one foot on the ground, the world waiting to see if I would rise or fall. The words cut deeper than any blade. This whole thing was staged. The mall that had just begun to pulse with applause turned into a hive of noise, buzzing with suspicion, anger, and confusion. People shouted over each other. Some called it lies. Others nodded eagerly, feeding the rumor like fire catching dry grass. Phones waved in the air, capturing every breath, every twitch, every stumble that could be twisted into proof. I stood still, half on the step, half off, my body caught between two worlds, one of dignity and one of disgrace. My cane pressed against the floor, grounding me. I told myself to breathe, but each inhale tasted of panic. For a moment I felt 17 again, sitting in that doctor's office when they said the world was closing in on my eyes. The same helplessness tried to choke me. My father moved closer. He didn't rush to defend himself. He didn't roar at the accuser. He just placed his hand gently on my shoulder, reminding me without words that storms end, but your response is what stays in people's memory. He leaned slightly toward me. "This is your fire to walk through," he whispered. "Don't wait for me to shield you. Speak." The weight of the crowd pressed against me like a tide. My ears searched for truth among the noise. Some people whispered, "Of course it's staged. Look at all the cameras." Others muttered, "No, this feels too raw. Who would embarrass themselves like this for politics?" I took the microphone in my hand again. My fingers shook, but my voice, when it came, surprised me. It was not weak. It was not even soft. It was steady, heavy, like the drums that guided my grandmother's songs. "You think this was staged?" I asked, facing the storm head-on. The noise dipped, my voice carried, bouncing off glass and marble. "You think I asked to be humiliated, to be dumped in front of strangers, to have my pain turned into hashtags?" I tapped my cane once against the marble. The sharp crack echoed. "No. What you saw was not a performance. It was life. And life is messy, life is cruel, life does not wait for you to prepare your lines." The murmurs changed tone, less mocking now, more curious. The air shifted slightly, like a room leaning in to listen. "I am blind," I continued, "but I am not a puppet. My father does not write my pain, and no team arranges my heartbreak. What you saw was me losing someone I cared about in the worst way possible, publicly. That's not politics. That's just being human." The applause came again, hesitant but real, small claps here and there. But as quickly as it rose, Myles sneered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Don't fall for it. He's just good with words. Of course they planned this. Look how perfectly he's talking, like it's a speech." "Real pain doesn't sound like that." Laughter rippled from a few corners. The doubt returned like smoke curling back under a door. Maya tugged on Myles's sleeve, whispering, "Please, enough, you're making it worse," but he shook her off, hungry for attention, desperate to prove himself right. I felt the sting of his words, because part of me feared the same thing. Did I sound too polished? Was my pain too rehearsed? But then I remembered all those nights I lay awake, speaking my fears out loud to the ceiling, practicing strength in the dark, where no one clapped and no one cheered. This was not performance. This was survival. I lifted my chin. "You're right about one thing, Myles," I said. "I am good with words, but you know why? Because when sight left me, I had to build a world out of words. I had to learn to describe what I could not see, to make others feel what I could not touch. Words are my eyes now, and if they sound polished, it's not because they're fake. It's because I've been using them to live." The silence that followed was different this time. It wasn't the silence of suspicion. It was the silence of people realizing they had misjudged. Then the clapping began again, louder, fuller. The child's voice piped up once more, ringing clear as a bell. "He's telling the truth, Mama." The cheer spread like fire on dry grass, but before I could breathe relief, another voice rose, this time from the reporters. "If this is truly real, Kai, then answer us this. What are you going to do about it? You talk about responsibility, about privilege. Words are nice, but actions matter. Right here, right now, what will you do?" The question hit me like a hammer. I froze. The crowd stilled again, hungry for an answer. My father stayed silent, testing me, waiting to see if I could rise. My heart pounded. My cane felt heavier than it ever had. I could walk away. I could let the cameras spin the story however they wanted. Or I could take the risk, the terrifying, impossible risk of stepping out of my father's shadow and proving myself before the world. I gripped the microphone tighter. "What will I do?" I repeated, my voice low at first, then rising. "I will not hide, I will not run. I will start by showing you that blindness is not weakness. I will start by showing you that I can stand here, in front of a world that doubts me, and not break." I placed my cane firmly on the stage step, lifted my foot, and climbed. The crowd roared as if each step were a victory. I stood at the center of the platform, the fountain splashing behind me, the drums of the culture fair resuming in the distance like a heartbeat. I faced the storm of cameras and lifted the mic one final time. "You want action? Watch me," I said. "This is just the beginning." The applause shook them all, echoing against the glass roof. But even through the cheers I could hear Myles's bitter whisper somewhere in the crowd. "We'll see how long he lasts." And I knew he wasn't done. Neither was the world. But neither was I. The roar of the mall still echoed in my chest as I stood on the stage, my cane steady, my breath sharp. Applause wrapped around me like a storm that wanted to lift me, but I could feel the other storm waiting behind it, harder, sharper, made of whispers and headlines, of people ready to twist my every word into proof of something false. The reporters weren't done. They never are. Their voices came one after the other, slicing through the clapping like knives through cloth. "Kai, will you run away from this when the cameras turn off? Kai, isn't it true your father's team uses moments like this to win sympathy? Kai, how can you claim strength when you rely on bodyguards just to walk through a mall?" Each question was designed not for truth, but for blood. I could feel the air shift as people leaned closer, eager for the next soundbite. For a second, I wanted to vanish, to let my father answer, to let him shield me. That old instinct to hide pressed against my ribs, but then I remembered his words. "This is your fire to walk through." I lifted the microphone again. "You want answers?" I said, keeping my voice firm. The crowd hushed. "Here's one. I will not run. You've seen me humiliated. You've seen me abandoned. If I can stand here after that in front of strangers and cameras, why would I run later? Running is for people who are afraid of the truth. I am not afraid." The silence that followed was thick, so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. But then, from the side of the stage, Myles shouted again, his words dripping with spite. "Talk is cheap. If you're really not afraid, then do something that proves it. Right here, right now, otherwise all of this is just noise." The crowd gasped. Maya whispered something sharp at him, but he ignored her. Reporters swung their cameras toward me, eager to see if I would crumble. My father stayed silent, his presence behind me like a mountain. He would not step in. Not now. I gripped my cane tighter. Myles wanted to break me. He wanted the world to laugh again, to point at me and say, "See? He's just a boy hiding behind speeches." I inhaled deeply. 4 in, 4 hold, 4 out. The world steadied. Then I turned toward his voice. "You want me to prove something?" I said, my tone calm but sharp. "Fine, I'll prove it. I'll walk this stage without help. Alone." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "But he's blind." Another hissed, "What if he falls?" My guard moved instantly, his voice low and tense. "Sir, that's unsafe. Let us guide you." I shook my head. "No, not this time." I tapped my cane against the stage floor, mapping it out. The sound told me where the edges were, where the steps dropped, where the wood shifted under weight. Slowly, carefully, I took one step, then another, tracing the space. My world was sound, vibration, the feel of air against skin. The audience held its breath. Myles laughed nervously. "This isn't proof. This is just—" But his voice wavered. He hadn't expected me to try. He hadn't expected me to move. I kept walking, each tap of the cane echoing louder than any word. I found the edge of the stage, turned, and walked back again. My foot caught slightly on a cable, but I steadied myself, refusing to stumble. When I reached the center once more, I lifted my chin. "Proof enough?" I asked. The mall erupted. Applause thundered so loudly, it rattled the glass roof. People cheered, shouted, clapped, until their palms stung. The child's voice rose again above them all. "He did it, Mama! He did it!" I smiled faintly. My heart was pounding, but I had done it. Yet even in the middle of the cheering, I could hear the journalists muttering to each other. They weren't satisfied. They never would be. And sure enough, one voice shouted from the back, desperate to regain control of the story. "If you can walk alone, Kai, then tell us, what will you do for the people? Words and walking aren't enough. What action will you take that matters to anyone beyond this mall?" The applause softened, replaced by curiosity. The crowd leaned in again. They wanted an answer. My father finally spoke then, his voice deep, steady, and commanding. "That is the right question." He stepped forward, just enough for the cameras to catch him, but not enough to steal my place. He turned his face toward me. "So, my son, what will you do?" The world froze. Every camera, every eye, every whisper focused on me. My mind raced. What could I promise? What could I give? I was just one man, blind, still finding his place. But I could feel the weight of legacy pressing on my shoulders. The legacy of a father who built roads, clinics, schools. The legacy of a family that carried more than just its own name. I swallowed, lifted the microphone, and spoke. "I will start by creating a foundation," I said, my voice steady, "for people with disabilities. Not tomorrow, not someday, now, right here. I will make sure that those who cannot see, those who cannot walk, those who cannot hear, are not invisible. I will use the privilege you all accuse me of having to give them a voice." The crowd roared. Some clapped, some cheered, some even wept. The words felt right, felt true, even though I had spoken them without planning. But just as hope surged again, a reporter shouted a question that turned the tide instantly. "Do you even have the power to do that, Kai? Or are you just making promises because your father will back you up?" The applause faltered. Whispers returned. Suspicion crept back in like shadows at dusk. And before I could answer, Myles's voice rang out again, cruel and triumphant. "Exactly. Without your father, you're nothing. No one would listen to you if you weren't his blind son." The mall exploded into chaos, shouts, arguments, applause battling boos. I stood in the center of it all, my cane pressed hard against the stage, my father beside me but silent, waiting to see if I would rise or collapse. And deep down I knew this was no longer about Maya, no longer about heartbreak. This was about identity, about whether I was more than a governor's son. And I had to prove it, not with words, not with walking, but with something that would silence every doubt. But what? That was the question burning in the air unanswered. As the mall shook with noise and the cameras waited like wolves, the mall shook with voices, each louder than the last. Some cheered my declaration. Others tore it down, their whispers sharp as broken glass. Reporters shouted questions over each other, their cameras blinking like the eyes of hungry wolves. My cane tapped against the stage floor, steady, steady, trying to anchor me in the middle of the storm. "You're nothing without your father." Myles's words rang like a curse through the chaos. People gasped, some agreeing, others shouting him down. Maya's trembling whisper trailed after him. "Please, stop. You're making this worse." But her plea drowned in the noise. For a moment I felt the heat of humiliation crawl up my neck again. My chest tightened. Was he right? Would I always be the governor's blind son, a footnote to my father's legacy, someone pitied or dismissed? My head spun with doubt. Then my father's hand, heavy and calm, settled on my shoulder, not shielding me, not pulling me back, just reminding me that strength doesn't always shout. It steadies. I inhaled. 4 counts in, hold. 4 counts out. My heartbeat slowed. "I hear you," I said into the microphone, my voice cutting through the noise. The mall quieted slightly, curious. "You say I'm nothing without my father. Maybe that's true, but hear this, every child begins with someone else's name. What matters is what they build with it." Myles scoffed. "Easy to say when your father's name is worth billions." "You think money builds a name?" I fired back. "You think wealth makes a man? My father sold oranges at a bus stop before anyone knew him. He built roads before he built wealth. He fed mouths before he fed his pride. That's the name I carry, not riches, responsibility." The crowd shifted again, applause sparking here and there, swelling into cheers. Myles's voice faltered. He hadn't expected me to fight with truth, but the reporters weren't finished. "Kai," one of them shouted, "you promised a foundation for the disabled. Fine words, but words don't fill stomachs. What's your first step? What can you do today to prove you're more than speeches?" The world hushed. It was the question that would either make me or break me. My palms were slick. My mind scrambled. What could I do here now, in the middle of a mall, with nothing but a cane, a microphone, and 1,000 watching eyes? I tapped the cane against the floor once, hard. The sound cracked like a gavel. "Action starts with listening," I said, "so I'll begin here. Who among you is living with what others call a disability? Who among you has been made invisible? A pause. Then slowly, a hand rose somewhere in the crowd. A woman's voice, hesitant but clear. Me, my daughter can't hear. People treat her like she's broken. Another voice, rougher. I was born with a twisted leg. Jobs don't want me. They see the limp, not the skill. More voices followed, 1, then 2, then 10. The mall shifted, transformed. What had been a place of shopping became a gathering of stories, voices trembling as they stepped out of the shadows. I listened to each one, nodding, acknowledging, repeating back their words so the crowd could hear. Your daughter is not broken, she is human. Tap of the cane. Your limp doesn't erase your skill. It makes your strength louder. Tap of the cane. The reporters leaned in, recording every word. The audience leaned closer, their hearts moving from curiosity to conviction. For once, the cameras weren't just chasing scandal. They were witnessing change. But Myles, bitter and restless, couldn't stand it. This is pathetic, he shouted. A pity party. He's turning this into a show because he knows he has nothing else to give. The crowd booed him now, their voices rolling like thunder. Maya pulled on his arm, desperate to silence him, but he shook her off. And then, for the first time since the chaos began, my father spoke, not to me, not to the crowd, but directly to Myles. His voice was low, calm, but it carried like thunder across still water. Young man, he said, you confuse cruelty for strength. Strength is lifting, not tearing down. Strength is steady, not loud. You will learn this either in wisdom or in regret. The words hit Myles harder than any shout. He fell silent, his pride shriveling under the weight of calm truth. But the test wasn't over. A reporter shouted the question that cut to the heart of everything. Kai, will you lead this foundation yourself, or will it just be another project with your father's name stamped on it? The mall froze again. My father's silence told me he would not rescue me. This was my answer to give. I swallowed hard, then raised the microphone. I will lead it, I said, not as my father's son, not as a blind man, but as Kai. And I will start tomorrow, with an open meeting, right here in this mall. Anyone living with a disability, anyone raising a child who feels invisible, anyone ready to help, come. We'll begin together. The crowd exploded, cheers crashing like waves against the marble walls. Phones rose higher, streaming live, sending my words into homes and streets beyond the mall. For the first time, I felt not like a shadow, but like a spark. Yet even as hope burned bright, I felt the tremor of danger under it, because promises ignite expectation, and expectation can destroy you if you fail. As the cheers swelled, I heard a whisper from my guard, low and urgent. Sir, we just got word. Opposition groups are already spreading lies online. They're calling your declaration a trick, a trap, and they're planning to protest your meeting tomorrow. The storm was only beginning. The mall emptied slowly that evening, but the echo of voices clung to the glass walls long after the last cheer faded. My body felt drained, every step heavy, every breath ragged, but my mind spun like a wheel in mud. I had declared a foundation, promised a beginning, sworn to stand apart from my father's shadow. The words had been true, but words demand flesh. Promises demand proof. As the car pulled away from the mall, my guard sitting silent beside me, I pressed my palm against the cool window and let the vibrations of the city fill my ears. Horns, shouts, the clatter of train tracks in the distance. Beneath it all, the faint buzz of phones. People still talking about me, tweeting, posting, dissecting. Every sound felt like judgment. Sir, my guard murmured, your father is waiting at the residence. He wants to speak with you privately. I nodded, though my stomach tightened. I knew what was coming. My father's silence on the stage had been deliberate. He wanted me to fight for myself. But in private, I would face the real verdict. When we arrived at the estate, a tall house with gates that whispered power and guards that stood like statues, I could hear the hum of generators, the murmur of aides, the faint scent of suya cooking somewhere in the kitchen. But the air felt heavy, waiting. My father sat in the study, the room thick with the smell of leather and old books. His face was unreadable, but his silence spoke louder than any welcome. "Sit," he said. I lowered myself into the chair opposite him, my cane resting across my lap like a sword laid down at the feet of a general. "You spoke well today," he began, his voice even. "You stood when most would have fallen. That is strength." I exhaled softly, relief starting to trickle in, until his tone sharpened. "But strength is not enough. You made a promise, Kai, not just to the people in that mall, but to everyone who watched. Do you understand what you have done?" I swallowed. I said what felt right. I couldn't stay silent. "What felt right," he repeated, leaning forward, "is not always what is wise. A foundation is not words, Kai. It is money, it is structure, it is power. Do you have these?" The truth stung. "No," I admitted. "Then how will you lead?" I gripped my cane tighter. "I'll learn. I'll gather people. I'll start with listening." My father's chair creaked as he leaned back. He was silent for a long time, then finally spoke. "Tomorrow will not be easy. Opposition voices are already stirring. They will come to tear you down, not to listen. They will say you are weak, that you are a puppet, that your blindness makes you unfit. If you cannot face them, better to withdraw now." The words landed like stones. "Withdraw?" I asked, my voice catching. "Yes," he said. "Pull back before the world rips you apart." Silence thickened between us. My throat burned, but I forced myself to answer. "If I withdraw now, I will never stand again. I'd rather be ripped apart trying than live as a shadow." For the first time his tone softened. "You sound like your grandmother," he said. "She once told me the same thing." "Very well, Kai. If this is your fire, walk through it. But know this. Once you start, there is no turning back." I nodded. My chest trembled with fear, but beneath it, something stronger pulsed. Resolve. That night, sleep did not come easily. When it did, it was filled with echoes of voices, Myles's sneer, the reporter's questions, the child's innocent cheer. I woke before dawn, heart pounding, cane already in my hand, as if my body knew the battle ahead. The sun rose hot and sharp over the city. By the time we reached the mall again, the air outside was alive with noise. I could hear it before the car even stopped. The chants, the drums, the angry cries. Protesters had gathered, their voices sharp as knives. "Fraud!" some shouted. "Staged!" others screamed. Their signs slapped against the air. I could hear paper flapping, wood sticks tapping the pavement, the rhythm of an angry crowd. Behind them, another sound rose, softer but steady. Supporters. Their voices carried hope instead of anger. Two crowds, two storms colliding at the doors of the mall. My guard leaned toward me. "Sir, it may be unsafe. We can cancel—" "No," I cut him off. "We go in." The doors opened, and heat and sound crashed into me like a wave. Reporters swarmed instantly, microphones thrust forward, questions pelting me like stones. "Kai, do you admit yesterday was political theater?" "Kai, will you apologize for misleading the public?" "Kai, are you using disability as a tool for sympathy?" I raised the microphone I had brought with me, gripping it tight. The crowd quieted just enough to hear. "I am not here to stage anything," I said. "I am here to listen. If you came to shout, shout. If you came to share, share. But this is not theater. This is the beginning of something real." The crowd split like a river hitting stone, half booing, half cheering. I walked forward, cane tapping, the sound grounding me amid the chaos. My guard stayed close, but he didn't lead. I had told him not to. Inside the mall, seats had been arranged, but the noise outside bled in, chants echoing off the glass. People filled the chairs, parents holding children, men with crutches, women with wheelchairs, young people with canes like mine. Their voices trembled as they began to speak, one by one. "My son cannot walk," a woman said, her voice breaking. "Schools push him aside." "I lost my sight in an accident," a man said. "My job dropped me the next day." Each story was another wound laid bare. I repeated their words into the microphone so all could hear, so none would be ignored. My heart ached with every testimony, but with each one, I felt something else too, strength, weaving itself from shared pain. But then the doors slammed open and the opposition stormed in. Their leader's voice rang out, sharp as iron. "This is nothing but a circus. Do not be fooled. The governor's son is using you to polish his father's image." Chaos erupted. Supporters shouted back. Protesters screamed louder. The mall shook with noise. I stood in the center, gripping my cane, my chest pounding. This was the fire my father had warned me of, and I knew I had to walk through it. I lifted the microphone high. "Enough!" I shouted. The word cracked the air, cutting through the chaos. The crowd stilled, waiting. "This is not my father's stage," I said. "This is mine, and I will not let you turn it into a battlefield. If you want to fight, leave. If you want to build, stay. But know this, I will build, with or without you." The room held its breath. My words hung like thunderclouds, waiting to break. And then, from the back of the room, a voice rose, familiar, bitter. "Myles. You think you can lead, Kai? Then prove it, right now. If you're serious, open your foundation's first account today. Show us the money. Otherwise, you're nothing but a liar." The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. All eyes turned to me, and I realized this was the trap. This was the moment that would define everything. The words sliced the air like a blade. "Open the account today. Show us the money." The mall shuddered with gasps, the sound swelling and folding in waves. Supporters shifted uncomfortably, some murmuring prayers under their breath, others whispering fears. What if he can't? What if this is all just talk? The protesters roared louder, clapping their hands in rhythm, chanting, "Prove it! Prove it! Prove it!" I stood in the middle of the noise, my cane pressed to the floor, my fingers trembling on the microphone. My throat was dry, my mind spinning. Myles had set the perfect trap. He wanted the world to see me stumble, to watch me choke on my own words, to prove to everyone that I was just a boy with speeches and no substance. My father's silence weighed behind me. I could feel his eyes, heavy and sharp, but he did not move to rescue me. He wouldn't, not this time. This was the test. I inhaled. 4 counts in. Hold. 4 counts out. My chest steadied. "You want proof?" I said, raising my voice so it cut through the chants. The mall hushed, slightly eager. "Then listen, I will open the first account for this foundation. Not tomorrow, not next week, now." The crowd erupted again, cheers from one side, jeers from the other. Myles laughed, his voice sharp with triumph. "And how will you do that, Kai? You can't even see the forms." His words stung, but they also lit a fire inside me. I lifted my chin. I don't need eyes to build. I need trust, and I will start with mine. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the wallet my father had given me years ago, the leather worn smooth from touch. My fingers found the card inside, my personal debit card, linked to the small allowance I had fought to keep separate from my father's wealth. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I held it up. "This is not my father's money, this is mine. Every allowance I saved, every scholarship I earned, every dime I refused to spend, just to prove to myself that I could stand apart. I will put all of it into this foundation today. Let the world see." The crowd exploded. Cheers shook the walls, drowning out the protesters. Phones rose higher, streaming live. The chant shifted from "prove it" to "do it, do it, do it." My guard stepped forward, murmuring, "Sir, we can contact the bank." "No," I said. "We do it here, publicly." The mall manager, trembling but eager, rushed forward. "We can set up a call, sir. We can connect you on speaker. Everyone will hear." Minutes later, the speakers crackled to life. The bank's voice came through, crisp and formal. "This is First National Bank. How may I assist you?" I took a breath and spoke clearly. "This is Kai Adewale. I want to open an account for a foundation for people with disabilities, and I want to transfer all of my savings into it. Today." Gasps filled the mall. Reporters leaned in, their pens scratching furiously. Myles's laughter faltered. The bank officer hesitated. Mr. Adewale, this is unusual. Are you certain? Yes, I said. I am certain. There was a pause, then the officer replied, Very well. Please confirm the amount you wish to transfer. I swallowed. My chest burned with both pride and fear. $35,000, I said. The crowd erupted again, cheers, applause, shouts of disbelief. Some clapped wildly, others cried, their voices breaking. Supporters surged forward, chanting my name. Kai, Kai, Kai! But amid the thunder, Myles's bitter voice cut through. 35,000? That's nothing. Pocket change compared to your father's billions. You think that makes you a hero? The cheers faltered. Doubt crept back in like shadows slipping under the door. I lifted my chin. It's not about the amount, I said, voice steady. It's about the beginning. 35,000 is not billions, but it's everything I have. And I would rather give my all than sit on my pride. The mall roared again louder than before. Supporters shouted, Everything he has! Everything he has! The chant spread like fire, drowning out the protests. But even as hope surged, I heard my guard's urgent whisper in my ear. Sir, online feeds are exploding. Opposition leaders are twisting this. They're saying you used your father's money, that you're lying, that this is all a publicity stunt. The weight of the world crashed back onto my shoulders. My father finally stepped forward then, placing his hand gently but firmly on my arm. Kai, he said, his voice low but clear enough for those near the stage to hear. You've taken the first step, but know this, the more you give, the more they will demand. Today is only the beginning. I nodded, my throat tight. I had proven something, yes, but Myles's sneer told me the battle was far from over. And then, just as I lowered the microphone, Maya's voice pierced the air for the first time since yesterday. Kai, she called, trembling. I made a mistake. Please, can we talk? The mall froze. The crowd gasped. Cameras swung toward her like vultures spotting fresh prey, and I stood in the center of it all, cane in hand, microphone trembling, the weight of the world on my shoulders. What would I say? Forgiveness or finality? The decision would shape not just my story, but the foundation of who I was becoming. The mall went so silent, I could hear the soft rush of the fountain again, the hum of the air conditioner, the distant shuffle of shoes on polished marble. 1,000 eyes burned into my back, waiting to see how I would answer. Maya's voice trembled, raw and shaky, but clear enough for every phone and every camera to catch. Kai, I was wrong. I was foolish. I said things I can never take back. Please, can we talk? Her words carried shame, regret, desperation. But were they real? Or just another performance born of fear now that she knew the truth of who I was? The crowd shifted. Some muttered angrily, She's only coming back because he's the governor's son. Others whispered, Give her a chance, people make mistakes. The journalists leaned forward, their cameras hungry, smelling blood. Myles stood stiff, his jaw clenched, glaring at her like she had betrayed him too. I gripped my cane tighter, the smooth wood grounding me as my chest filled with fire. My heart wanted to scream. Where were you when I stood alone? Where were you when you laughed, when you left me in front of the world? But another voice inside whispered, This is more than your pain now. The world is watching how you respond. What you say next will define you. I raised the microphone slowly, my breath steady, each word deliberate. Maya, I said, my voice carrying through the silence, you didn't just leave me. You shamed me. You mocked what I cannot change. You threw away kindness for pride. And now, when you see the cameras, the attention, my father's name, you return. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Her voice broke. No, Kai, it's not like that. I was scared. I didn't know how to handle your blindness. I thought love meant being seen, but I didn't realize love also means seeing with more than eyes. I was wrong. Tears slipped into her words. Some in the crowd softened, murmuring, Maybe she means it. Others shook their heads firmly, muttering, Too late. I breathed deeply. 4 in, hold, 4 out. My pulse steadied. Then I spoke again. Maya, forgiveness is not a performance. It's not something you beg for when the world is watching. It's something you prove with actions, not words. She sobbed quietly. Myles hissed at her. Stop embarrassing yourself. But she ignored him. The crowd leaned closer. The reporters whispered furiously, scribbling every word. My father remained still behind me, silent, letting me lead. I lifted my chin. I don't hate you, Maya, I said. But I cannot go back, not now, not ever. You left me when I needed you most, and that told me everything I needed to know. The mall erupted. Cheers, claps, cries of agreement. Supporters shouted my name again. Kai! 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 The sound rattled the glass roof, echoed off the marble, thundered in my chest. Maya broke down, her cries swallowed by the noise. Myles grabbed her arm, pulling her away roughly. The cameras followed them, snapping pictures of her tears, his scowl, the broken pieces of their pride. I lowered the microphone. My body trembled with exhaustion, but my heart was steady. The decision had been made, the line drawn. Then, just as the applause began to fade, a new voice pierced the air. Deep, commanding, unfamiliar. Mr. Kai Adewale, the voice called from the entrance of the mall. The crowd parted, gasps rippling again. If you are serious about this foundation, then prove it not with words, not with pity, but with leadership. We represent the National Disability Coalition. We've been fighting for decades, and we are here to test you. The crowd shifted in awe. Supporters whispered, "It's them, the real activists." Reporters surged forward, desperate to catch every word. The man continued, his tone hard as steel. Tomorrow, there is a march, tens of thousands, demanding rights long denied. If you want to lead, stand with us. Not on a stage, not in front of cameras, on the streets, shoulder to shoulder, where leaders are made. The mall gasped again. The challenge was clear. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about speeches. This was about walking literally into the fire. I felt the cane in my hand. My blindness pressed against me like a wall. A march, tens of thousands. The chaos, the danger, the risk of stumbling, of being trampled, of being mocked again. Fear clawed at me. But then I remembered the boy's voice from yesterday. He's brave, Mama. He's not weak. I tightened my grip on the microphone. My lips parted. My decision formed, and the mall held its breath, waiting to hear if I would rise or retreat. The crowd leaned forward, breaths caught in their throats as the man's challenge echoed through the mall. Stand with us tomorrow, on the streets where leaders are made. Every sound around me slowed, the murmur of voices, the hum of the air conditioner, even the fountain's splash. My cane pressed hard against the stage floor. Fear rose sharp in my chest. A march of tens of thousands, a sea of people, bodies pressing, voices roaring, streets shaking. For someone who could not see, it was not just a march, it was a battlefield. But deep beneath the fear, something else stirred, a quiet, steady flame. I had declared, I had promised, I had started, and now the test had come. I raised the microphone. My voice shook on the first word, but steadied on the second. I will march, I said. The mall erupted. Cheers thundered like drums. Supporters screamed my name. Reporters scribbled furiously. Even the protesters fell silent, their chants swallowed by the force of my words. The man from the coalition nodded once, firm and satisfied. Then tomorrow, young man, we will see if your words have legs. The crowd parted for him as he turned and left, his presence heavy even in absence. That night, I did not sleep. I lay awake, cane by my side, heart pounding. Images swirled in the dark of my mind, streets filled with footsteps, chants rising like thunder, arms brushing mine, shoulders pressing close. I imagined stumbling, falling, being crushed. I imagined Myles laughing in the crowd, shouting, "I told you so!" I imagined cameras capturing every mistake, headlines screaming governor's son collapses in March disaster. But I also imagined something else, hands lifting me if I fell, voices chanting not against me but with me, steps steady beside mine. And above it all, I imagined my father's voice, deep and proud. Stand tall enough for two. Dawn broke, hot and bright. By the time we reached the city square, the noise was already rising, a sea of voices, drums pounding, chants rolling like waves, tens of thousands, just as the man had promised. I could feel the ground trembling under the rhythm of so many feet. The air was thick with heat, sweat, determination. My guard leaned close. "Sir, it's dangerous. The crowd is restless. There are whispers of infiltrators, people planted to stir chaos. We can pull back." I shook my head. "No. We go forward." My father's voice came from behind, calm but firm. "Kai, this is not my fire. It is yours. But remember, marching is not just walking. It is carrying the weight of others with you. Can you bear it?" I turned toward him, my grip tight on the cane. "I must." The coalition leader approached, his voice cutting through the chants. "You are late, but you are here. That is enough. Stand with us, shoulder to shoulder." He placed me in the front line, between a woman in a wheelchair and a man with one arm. Their strength radiated through the air, steady and real. The march began, feet moved, drums thundered, voices rose in unison. Equality now, dignity now. The ground pulsed under us, each step a heartbeat. My cane tapped, finding rhythm, marking the edges, mapping the path. My ears filled in the world, shoes scuffing, flags whipping in the wind, chants echoing off tall buildings. I stumbled once, my foot catching on uneven pavement. Gasps rose, cameras clicked. But before I could fall, the woman in the wheelchair touched my arm lightly. "Steady," she whispered. Her strength flowed into me. I straightened, lifted my chin, and kept moving. The chants grew louder. Supporters shouted my name, blending it into the rhythm. "Kai, Kai, Kai!" For the first time, it wasn't just a chant of pity. It was a chant of belonging. But then, as the march reached the central square, chaos struck. Shouts erupted from the back. The rhythm broke. The crowd rippled with panic. My guard's voice cracked through the noise. "Infiltrators! They're pushing! Stay steady!" The ground shook as bodies surged. Screams pierced the air. Someone shoved hard against me. I stumbled, cane flying from my hand. The world spun into chaos. Blindness swallowed me whole, darker than ever without my cane. Fear clawed at me. My legs froze. The roar of the crowd blurred into one deafening storm. I felt hands shoving, pulling, pressing. My chest heaved. Was this the end? Was this how it would all collapse? Then, hands caught me. Strong, steady. Not my father's, not my guard's. The coalition leader's voice growled in my ear. "Stand, boy, stand. They want you to fall. Show them you will not." My heart pounded. My legs shook. But I stood. "Cane," I shouted. A voice, high and young, answered, "Here, mister." A small hand pressed the cane back into mine. The child from the mall. The same voice that had shouted, "He's brave, Mama." Strength flooded me. I lifted the cane, pressed it to the ground, and tapped once, loud, sharp, steady. The chants faltered, then shifted. Thousands of voices rose together. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythm spread, echoing my cane. The chaos calmed. The infiltrators' shoves were drowned in unity. The march moved forward again, steadier, stronger. By the time we reached the square, the storm had passed. We stood together, thousands united, voices thundering into the sky. I raised the microphone the coalition leader handed me. My throat was raw, but my voice carried. "You tried to make me a spectacle," I said. "You tried to make me weak, but I am not weak, and neither are we. Today, we march not for pity, not for power, but for dignity. Blind or sighted, walking or wheeled, silent or loud, we are here, and we will not be invisible again." The roar that followed shook the city. Flags waved, fists lifted, chants thundered. For the first time, I felt not like the governor's son, not like a blind boy abandoned in a mall, but like a leader, carrying a people carried by them too. My father's voice reached me, low and proud, through the roar. "Kai, today you became more than my son. Tears burned in my eyes, unseen, but felt. I gripped the cane tighter, raised it high above my head, and let the chance carry me. I had walked through the fire, and I was still standing. The story was no longer about what I had lost. It was about what I had become,